from Sam Now, a documentary made over the course of 25 years about two young brothers on a quest to find their missing mom. Now streaming on Criterion Channel and all platforms. Awards eligible. More at samnowmovie.com.
At home or out and about, you're never too far from your mobile phone, which means you're never too far from WNYC. Live stream your favorite shows anytime. Just go to your browser and type in wnyc.org.
On the next All of It, The Color Purple is now a movie musical, and it's one of the most anticipated films opening this month. Director Blitz Bazawule joins me to discuss. And I'll speak with the curator of the Women Dressing Women exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which celebrates the creativity of female designers dressing female bodies of all types. I'm Allison Stewart. Join me for All of It, weekdays at noon on WNYC.
Marketplace Morning Report is coming up next, and then in 10 minutes at 9 o'clock, it's the BBC NewsHour on WNYC. Let's check in with London to see what they're working on. London, good morning.
Good morning, WNYC. I'm Nuala McGovern. On today's NewsHour, the COP28 Climate Summit was supposed to wrap up, but a draft deal has caused controversy, not consensus. We're following developments, and we'll also discuss modern-day climate denialism. That's BBC NewsHour coming up at 9 on WNYC.
We have some bright sunshine this morning, but it's cold out there. It's 38 in the city, on our way to a high of 44 under lots of sunshine today. A little bit on the breezy side, too. Clear and cold tonight, down into the mid to upper 30s. And then tomorrow, sunny and 44 once again and windy. Colder on Thursday, under sunshine. Again, 38 and sunny at 8:52.
An epic loss for Google.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Total Wine and More, where shoppers can find a great Cabernet, bourbon, or sparkling wine for everyone on their list this holiday season. Total Wine and More. Drink responsibly. Be 21.
From Marketplace, I'm Sabri Benishore, in for David Brancaccio. Google has lost an antitrust lawsuit brought by Epic Games. Epic makes the popular Fortnite video game. It accused the search giant of being a monopoly, specifically when it comes to Google's App Store. Epic says Google has app developers over a barrel if they want to be on Google's App Store, extracting exorbitant fees and other concessions. Epic actually sued Apple over the same issues, but mostly lost that case. The difference between the two? One was decided by a jury, the other by a judge. Marketplace's Nova Safo has the details.
It took a federal jury in San Francisco less than 4 hours to reach a unanimous verdict against Google in a case that could upend the way customers access and use apps across mobile devices. Epic Games accused Google, as it did Apple, of financially squeezing app developers, forcing them to pay high fees of up to 30% of online transactions and using illegal tactics to ward off competing payment systems and app stores. Central in the Google case was the charge that it ties together the ability for apps to be on its app store with a requirement that they use Google's billing service. In the Apple case, a judge said Epic had not presented enough evidence that Apple ran a monopoly. An appeals court reaffirmed that decision, and both Apple and Epic have asked the Supreme Court to weigh in. Google says it will also appeal the jury's verdict. Its lawyers argue that, unlike Apple, Google at least allows competing app stores to exist on Android devices. I'm Nova Safo for Marketplace.
Consumer prices rose 0.1% in November. After being flat in October over the previous 12 months, prices rose 3.1%. That's an improvement over October. Taking out food and energy, core inflation was up 0.3% month to month, 4% over the year. With that, let's see how markets felt about it. Let's do the numbers. Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ futures are all up in the 1 to 0.2% range, with Dow futures up 71 points. The yield on the 10-year Treasury is 4.221%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by C3 Generative AI. Verified traceable answers, secure, hallucination-free, LLM-agnostic, IP liability-free. Learn more at c3.ai. And by the American Opportunity Index, a new ranking of how well companies invest in talent and advance employees' careers. More at americanopportunityindex.org.
The Biden administration wants $50 billion in aid to Ukraine and another $14 billion to Israel. Republicans want, in exchange, changes to the immigration system, restricting the asylum process, for example. Negotiations are up against a tight deadline. Congress is going into recess for the rest of the year on Friday. Not making this any easier is the fact that immigration is a fraught and emotional topic. Meaningful reform has eluded the U.S. for decades. But what happens if we try and strip out some of the emotion and take a look at immigration through the lens of economics? What can we learn? Zeke Hernandez is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business, and he's here to talk about it. Professor, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
When it comes to the economics of immigration, there is the big one, immigration and its effect on wages and jobs. So let's start there. Does immigration reduce wages?
The short answer is no. When you have these newcomers, they're also growing the economy. So it's not just the supply of workers that increases, but the demand for other things also increases, which means the economic pie is bigger, which is why there's not zero-sum competition. The other reason is that someone who's worried about immigrants taking jobs or lowering wages is often assuming that an immigrant worker is identical to a native worker. But they're not. For example, we know that immigrants take and want different jobs. For example, in farms, in factories, in construction that natives simply won't do.
Some people will say it's not that natives won't do jobs. It's just that, we have to pay them more to get them to do those jobs. So we don't actually need immigrants to do them.
Yeah, I understand. Again, we have no evidence to support that. And in many sectors, we do have very clear evidence that natives simply will not do the jobs. So Michael Clemens has a study looking at North Carolina farm jobs in 2011. In that year, because of the aftermath of the financial crisis that North Carolina was still suffering, there were 500,000 unemployed North Carolinians. And there were 6,000 job openings in North Carolina farms. Out of those 6,000 jobs, there were 268 applications from native workers. Of those, all were hired. 163 of them showed up to work, and only 7 finished the harvest. Right? So that's pretty stark.
Is there an economic need for immigrants? Or more specifically, where is there an economic need for immigrants?
So here's some facts. Immigrants are 18% of the labor force, okay? But they are 45% of workers in household services, 36% in clothing manufacturing, 33% in agriculture, 32% in hospitality. Where you see sectors that immigrants are disproportionately represented in the workforce, those are the kinds of jobs where we really need immigrants.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams recently said New York would have to cut its budget to accommodate the hundreds of millions of dollars spent on housing an influx of migrants. Presumably many of these people do end up working, generating economic activity, paying taxes even, but they also use social services like the mayor was complaining about. So what about that situation? How does that net out?
There is evidence showing that every first-generation immigrant, on average, costs the state $1,600. But when you go to the second and third generation, that is the children and grandchildren of those immigrants, states collect a lot more than that $1,600. They collect $3,000 across the 2 generations. So fair point, but the wrong conclusion would be to say, therefore, don't allow immigrants in, because in the long run, the economies of these states would be worse off.
Zeke Hernandez is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. His new book, out in June, is called The Truth About Immigration: Why Successful Societies Welcome Newcomers. Professor Hernandez, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Our producers are Naomi Rainey, Liz Maie, Nick Perez, Ariana Rosas, Alex Schroeder, and Erica Soderstrom. Our senior producer is Meredith Gerritsen-Morby. And in New York, I'm Sabri Ben-Achour with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.